So if you just pulled up the composite chart for your relationship with another person and you're wondering if it's toxic or not, if there's anything you should be looking out for you, I got you. So if you don't know, the composite chart is when you take two people's charts and you find the midpoint between every shared planet, or every planet, because you share the same planet. So like where your sun and their sun are, the middle is the midpoint, and that's how all the composite placements are found. This is different than synastry, which is how you interact and you see each other. This is the life of the relationship, which can be significantly different. It's how you guys are together as a unit. And some relationships shouldn't be born. So we're going to talk about major red flags that can be found in composite charts. If you want to learn about synastry, I made a full synastry red flags video. So my disclaimer, as always, is let's be adults here. If you have one of these things, not a big deal. Relationships are complicated. If you have several, or if you're more advanced and you just know that the good does not outweigh the bad, that's where we can be more realistic here. But don't get scared if you have like one of these things. This is going to be more about a compilation or an exact horrible thing going on, but we can always, mitigate. There can be other factors, so don't get too scared. Please be nuanced and not stupid. So the first thing to talk about is house placements, because in a composite chart, we can be pretty literal with the better houses or the worse houses. If we have a lot of placements in better houses, that's good for the relationship. But if you have placements in some of these houses in this way, this might point to more challenge. So the first, and one that is pretty clearly not great, is having the sun in the composite 12th house. So this is kind of like welcome to an invisible relationship. It's not going to really get off the ground in a super public way. You might be confused, and it might be focused on secrecy or on addiction and bad mental health issues. I see this a lot in situationships that don't get off the ground, or relationships based on unhealthy habits. So if you have the sun in the 12th house, you might never know what you are, or you might just be in a relationship where it is hidden and secret from the world. This can be heavily mitigated if there's Jupiter, whatever, of course, but on its own, sun in the 12th house is super not ideal for a composite chart. Now, the second is if you have the moon or a lot going on in the 8th house. Now, on the bright side, it can point towards investing and building long-term money together. On the other side, it can point to a lot of dark events or themes involved in the relationship. So it's less to show that the intentions or the setup is like undefined or negative like the 12th house. This is more to show that there can be significant loss or themes of tragedy in the relationship. I don't mean to scare you guys, because plenty of charts have 8th house placements and are neutral, but if there's a lot there, or there's a challenging moon placement there does tend to be more emotional difficulty going on. Now, the other one is one that I do not look at as challenging in natal charts. So if you have this in your natal chart, I do not view it quite as intense, but in a composite chart, if Saturn is in the 7th house, and this is a nighttime composite chart, so the sun is in the bottom half of the chart specifically. If Saturn is in the 7th house in a composite chart, it can turn into an obligatory or commitment-based relationship without too much emotional fire or like romance. So if there are other things that are very romantic and are very emotionally charged, this can be a nice grounding point. But if there's not much else to mitigate this, Saturn in the 7th house in a composite chart can show obligation or a marriage or relationship of convenience and having to be together that feels like chains. So this is one where this can be more easily mitigated, because this can show, like you were set up and you did have to be together for business, but it worked out, or like it wasn't at first a very like transactional thing and then it wasn't, but it's not ideal, obviously. Now, the second category of things that are red flags are aspects that can just be very, very tumultuous and explosive and possibly harmful emotionally to you all. So the first is having the composite moon square, opposite, or conjunct Pluto. So the moon is often the emotional nature of the relationship, and I've seen this really, really be true, reflects the woman or the more feminine partner's psyche in the relationship. So this can be really hot and obsessive at first. It can feel like you all are so close, you are so intertwined, but it can turn into not that. It can be possessiveness, jealousy, and being so controlling of the partner that there's a ton of resentment that builds up, and there tends to be a ton of toxicity with this, with the emotional possession and volatility. Unfortunately, I can say that this is so fucking unfortunate. Every single composite chart I have ever pulled up between me and someone that I've only really had one boyfriend, my current boyfriend, but like anyone I've ever pulled up a composite chart between them and I, because I've been involved with them in some way or hoping to date them or whatever, they have always been somehow leading to a composite moon, Pluto, and Scorpio with me. It has been I mean my entire life. So unfortunately, I tend to have only been involved with people with Sagittarius or Capricorn moons. And I am a Libra moon, early Libra moon. So I'm a Sagittarius Pluto as well. So like that always combines into moon, Pluto, conjunction Scorpio and composites. And it sucks. It fucking sucks. I hate seeing a moon, Pluto in a composite. I'm just like, girl, you're going to suffer. So it's very unfortunate that I'm always, I don't know, dating or around people that have Pluto in Scorpio and then their moon around like there, and then it ends up being that. So the second, sorry about the tangent, is having the composite Venus square, opposite, or conjunct Saturn. I think this is more challenging with the square and the opposition rather than the conjunction, because the conjunction tends to be like understood or ingrained. The square or the opposition show conflict. Basically, Venus and Saturn in a composite can show like, I love you, but I can't. Or one person really wants it and the other person withholds a ton. So if it's a positive aspect between Venus and Saturn, let's say a trine or a sextile, sometimes a conjunction, that can show stability and maturity. But when it's the square, the opposition, and usually the conjunction, this is very much like not being enough or not, it's emotionally really, really stifled. And there's a ton of rejection, erosion, and just painful self-worth, like lack, that can happen. Now, again, this is one that in synastry between Venus and Saturn, this can be overcome in synastry. When like one person is a lot colder, but you have other stuff where you get along. This in the composite is like the relationship itself has rejection as a part of it. Now, the other one that is challenging is having the composite Mercury square, opposite, or conjunct Neptune. I really, really don't like this because this confuses the communication and usually represents dishonesty. So if you notice that the composite Mercury has a hard aspect to Neptune in the composite, the dishonesty, the lying, and the wishful thinking of that relationship can be super duper harmful. And this is usually pretty mutual between the two. This is different than synastry where it's one party kind of going after another. This is a ton of assuming and idealization and projection, and just looks like the logic could be built on a house of cards for this. Now, in general, these are 3 planets that you want to watch out for with any huge amount of activity. So let's say that you have a ton in Leo in the composite chart, and all those Leo placements are square Pluto and Scorpio. That would make Pluto a major player in the chart. So that's one example of like Pluto, if that is heavily, heavily afflicted in the composite chart, there could be so much trauma and control and trying to manipulate each other. Like, the good thing about Pluto is that sometimes you can grow so much and give up control, but that is so rare. Like, I feel like every time, because when I was younger, when I was like, I don't know, like 10, 11, 12, I thought Pluto was so cool, and I used to like look up like all this stuff about Pluto and watch videos on it. And it was really clear to me that a few people were like, you know, you come out on the other side changed, but a lot of people come out on the other side on SSRIs. So like, be super careful if you find that your composite chart has Pluto touching a lot of things in a square, opposition, or conjunction, especially if it is the moon or something like, no. And the other difficult planet is Neptune. If Neptune is making aspects all over the chart, one of you or both of you are probably dating a fantasy or are deeply confused about what you want and what is real. Neptune can be really heartbreaking because when it's positive, it shows beauty and spiritual connection. But I would say that Neptune is probably the most depressing planet when it comes to challenging aspects, because there's nothing sadder than like an illusion breaking or someone's real truth coming out. So Neptune, when it's in a hard aspect, always gets me to tell someone, I don't know if you're gonna like it when you get out of the honeymoon phase, because that's usually the lifespan of Neptune is like 3 to 6 months, I like to say, in a relationship. So it can be really heartbreaking if Neptune is opposite, conjunct, or square a lot of planets. Now, the third one is one that isn't quite as overtly challenging, but can be challenging in a composite, is Saturn, because if there's a hard aspect from Saturn to multiple planets, it can show pressure and guilt and coldness. If it is well placed, it can mean stability. So Saturn is one where it's not overtly challenging. If it is well placed and making positive aspects, it can show stability and maturity. But if it's in a very hard aspect to other things, it can show just consistent coldness and pressure that is very inconvenient. Now, some of you might be asking why I'm not grouping in Uranus or Mars with the planets to watch out for. Of course, hard aspects from Uranus or Mars to other planets will probably be challenging, but Uranus is more of a trickster and more of a volatility planet. So with Uranus, I often don't see that relationship even being long-term. Like the Uranus composites that I've seen that are heavy Uranus, myself or other people's, it shows an impactful relationship, one that didn't go a long time, but it doesn't mean it's bad or challenging at all. And then if Mars is all over a composite, that's really argumentative and very conflict-ridden, but that usually doesn't mean that there's projection. It usually means that you guys just don't like each other in the first place and the relationship's not going to come about, so I don't need to talk about it. So the fourth kind of thing to talk about is when there are, I don't want to call them soul ties, because like what the fuck does that mean? But you might hear people call this that. I would prefer to say internally like invisible string theory type shit, where you are internally obsessed with or so gravitationally pulled towards that person and you don't know why. So whether you want to call it karmic attachment or soul ties, I'm really careful with that language because I don't want to make people think that I'm careful with language, and I prefer to say just like the gravity for whatever, invisible string kind of theory reason is so like you feel like you're in a contract. These are some things about that to be careful for. So firstly is the North Node conjunct specifically Moon, Pluto, or Neptune. The North Node is not bad, so I don't want to label it as bad, but it is a huge like revving up of an engine. Like the North Node represents volume up or increase, and volume up and increase are great when they're on positive things. But if it's on the Moon in the composite, it can feel so like you're on an emotional roller coaster and you feel as if your contract is emotional growth, but in a really painful way. I don't like Moon North Node. Sun, Venus, Jupiter North Node, cute, but Moon, I'm like, this is the emotional growth is different than financial growth. So it's a little bit challenging. I don't love to see that. North Node on Pluto is just like, stop. The trauma bond, the drama. North Node Pluto, I'm like, enough. Please don't even. And then North Node Neptune, that illusion is going to be so powerful and hurtful when it breaks. This can be really good for like creative people together because you have something to focus on that's like creative. But in a loving relationship, North Node on Neptune, you could find out that you married a serial killer and you're still in love with them. That's the kind of vibe here. Having the South Node on anything, I don't view quite as high risk because the South Node usually relates to apathy or the past or comfort, but having the South Node on things like Saturn or Mars or Pluto, Saturn, Mars, Pluto, I would say that. The South Node can drain or feel very taxing. So it's not necessarily bad, but if it's on a planet, you might feel as if that energy in the composite is so gone. So having like the South Node on Mars might show that you guys just don't have motivation together and you feel way too comfortable. Having the South Node on Pluto might be that you aren't suspicious enough of other people. You're way too relaxed and trusting, and there's a certain level of complacency. And then having the South Node on Saturn could just show that you're like immature fucktards. So the South Node can sometimes minimize things or show that they aren't touched on. I don't hate it. Like the South Node isn't bad, like the North Node isn't bad, but things that increase and things that decrease are more optimal in different situations. The third thing that can be lumped into this karmic soul tie gravity kind of thing is having the composite Chiron conjunct Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars. If it's an outer planet, it's kind of derivative enough to where I don't really care. But if composite Chiron is conjunct Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, I would say. This feels like a relationship usually that is there for you to heal a trigger, but not be with them long term. So it's probably going to trigger a wound or an insecurity in you and be very useful for making that clear. You will probably just be so triggered by that person, you're not able to like fall in love with them generally. There's more pain than there is passion with this. And this doesn't show conflict, but this shows like, let's say that you have a deep insecurity about like, I don't know, you were abused as a kid. And so now you're dating an athlete. and like they aren't abusive, but they are strong and you're like way too triggered. It could be something like that where like it's not intentional or anything like that. Chiron on Mercury usually isn't that bad. It just usually shows that you are really emotionally charged with communication. And like I said, Chiron on like outer planets, it's too derivative. It's not really going to be that evident in the relationship in logical day-to-day ways. We can get into the esoterics, but honestly, I don't feel like doing that. And just to clarify, if you have one of these, do not freak out. I listed so many, you're bound to have one. It's about the, like, how close they are. Are these within a degree of each other in a if it's a super close aspect, that is more challenging. If it is further away or placed differently, that is, like, if there's mitigations, we have to look at the whole chart. We have to look at the synastry. We have to look at the transits that are going on to each person as well. Not as heavily, but synastry and composite need to be both looked at for a holistic picture. We can be realistic here. If your composite with someone else doesn't have placements in good houses, let's say 7th, 5th, 9th, and 11th in good ways, if it's full of Moon, Pluto, Neptune, Venus shit, come on, like we can be real and honest about that. So if you found this helpful, please let me know in a comment below. Let me know your experiences. And I think I will be filming a green flags and synastry and green flags and composite chart each. I'm about to go to Ireland for the rest of the year, so I will probably be filming them there unless I want to do that tomorrow. So you will see a new background and lots of new things in my videos. But let me know any other video ideas you have below. I prefer YouTube to TikTok. I like talking. So let me know below. And yeah, let me know any composite experiences or thoughts that you might have. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.